the government and private sector on the multifaceted approach to fill in the gaps. That includes increased training of our local population, increased workforce participation, and bringing back overseas workers and skilled migrants. What are the objectives of convening this forum? It is to better understand the workforce challenges facing businesses and companies in the different sectors, to understand what are the specific skills and manpower required by different sectors in the short, medium, and long term. What are the priorities for action to address these challenges? What are the priorities for action for apprentices, trainees, youth employment, schooling, diaspora, and foreign workers? What are the collaborative efforts that are required to address workforce challenges? And what measures can be put in place to immediately and in the medium and long term to address labor challenges in all the sectors? Based on the urgency of needs, what are the key priorities for action that government and private sector need to collaborate on? Is it sustained long-term real increases to vocational education and training? Is it increased funding for new initiatives to bring down the cost of training? Is it to introduce initiatives to support people in their work? Or is it to increase skilled migrant numbers, cut visa processing times, among other things? Do we assess and implement successful initiatives of other countries to encourage greater human capital transfer? These can include, for example, partnership with other countries for working holiday makers and international students. Whatever the initiatives that are pursued, it will require the commitment from all levels of government and private sector to work together in partnership to address these talent shortages. The program for this forum was intentionally and carefully planned. Therefore, the expectation is for as many of the attendees to share their concerns, experiences, challenges, needs, and ideas so collectively these can be addressed and the next steps determined. We must have an open, frank national conversation on this subject. In the first part of the program, you will benefit from the guidance of key policymakers on the topic, followed by short presentations of information that you may consider using in your business or as a collaborative to address the gaps, as a collective to address the gaps and shortages. And finally, having benefited from your predecessor speakers, the vast majority of time will be given to you to share your concerns, challenges, experiences, and suggestions. The Diaspora Unit is making itself available to help each sector in whatever way it can to address labor challenges and needs. This is why, as a first step, we have convened this forum to understand how we may assist you and the country at large. And I've just noticed that we have the Honorable Minister Ashley Singh with us and also the Honorable Robertson Ben with us. And I know although Minister Ben just walked in, I'm afraid I'm going to have to put him on the spot to call him to the podium to make his opening remarks.
Well, good morning and thank you, Ms. Russell, Minister Ashney, Minister Edgel, our leaders in government and business. I'm happy to have been vicariously asked to come to this event, which has to do, I'm sure, with the challenges we face in enabling the skilled, professional Guyanese workforce for our country's needs. I am certainly concerned about the matter. I know that we have a gap. At the time that we did our work for the establishment of the exploration on our economy, given the nature of the business, the size of the discoveries, and the fairly low places we were in respect of being able to fill places which would naturally and rapidly come into demand for labor, demand for professionals. Certainly, we are at the point where this problem is manifest in the country. Naturally, in many of the developments which take place, which are ongoing, there is a willingness, a resort naturally to bring in skilled people, highly skilled professionals from overseas to fast track the developments, which is necessary. And of course, given the fact that we had lost workers, skilled and unskilled, semi-skilled over the years, when we had economic difficulties in our country and other difficulties, there was a big gap. Even the thought that we would have gotten back some of our people who would have gained experience in Trinidad and Tobago, either offshore or onshore, that gap could not be met. The challenge we have now is that we are bringing in a large number of, should not be necessarily forced, while we are faced with dealing with the fact that there is a gap. We should not necessarily be forced to abandon our people, or workers, or laborers. If we make the quick and ready and easy resort to bring in people, where we could have the opportunity to give Guyanese workers, to upskill them, to give young people leaving schools or unemployed. We have many youths who are unemployed. If we do not take the rational resort of training up our people to go into the workforce, we will have a social and economic problem and a political problem. And this is beyond issues of crime and violence and all this. It's a social and economic problem and a political problem. Of course, we're sure, we know, we understand why we have dysfunctional youth. In many instances, even when we employ people, they are either unready, unwilling, not willing to impart their skills, or do jobs poorly. They don't want necessarily to be managed. There's a usual claim and a valid claim from the industry that sometimes when you bring in young people, or even people who are mature persons to work, they do not stay, or they move off after a few weeks or after the first few paychecks, and they hop over to the next perceived opportunity. Perhaps their hopes and ambitions in respect of staying and working in Guyana is extremely low, and so they are not disciplined and ready to work. But we have had strong traditions of having, perhaps in enclaves, whether it's the sugar industry, in the mining, or wherever, in the forestry, a strong tradition of having good, disciplined Guyanese workers, trained up, fostered, and promoted by the employers. And so the challenge we have has to be dealt with by an approach across the sectors of the government, the various agencies, and of course, in relation to having a change in the current approach we're taking. There's a big gap. The offshore industry, offshore and onshore, the laydown yards and all of these supporting cast for the oil and gas industry requires thousands of workers. In the other sectors of the economy, persons are asking us to bring in people who are laborers, or watchmen, or carpenters, things which will continue to displace Guyanese workers. We, I think, do not have a difficulty if there are projects for which contracts have been given out and which have to be fast-tracked in a certain short period of time for bringing in those skills and those persons who have the ready and ongoing expertise in terms of doing the type of work to do a certain building. Like this building. When I was Public Works Minister, Walter Willis and I had difficulties in getting this building built. There was a Chinese group, and then there were people who were brought in from Plaisance and my villages there, over Commissar industry. And the Chinese had difficulty in keeping them on. Perhaps what the people from those communities thought was the approach to the work by those persons was perhaps too regimented, and where they would work for a few hours, take a 2-hour break at midday, and then starting back work at 5 in a certain way. And of course, there's always the problem of language difficulties. The two groups did not match. And ultimately, most of the Guyanese fell out of the activity. And we got the building done after a lot of quarrels and changes and so on. But there are certain projects which, to fill the gap and in a short space of time, and where certain skills and expertise and experience and new ways of doing things have to have a requirement and a demand for foreign workers. But beyond that, we have to train our young people. We would all agree that our men are dysfunctional. We all agree that our men are insecure. Our men are at a position where they can't handle women coming into the workforce and being bosses. Our men can't handle it. They got to be retrained and everything. But we have to do the job for those school leavers or those who would have left school over the last 3 to 5 years to design apprenticeship programs, to bring them into a new culture with respect to safety, to discipline. It means that our businesses or leaders in industry have to get these young people. I had a quarrel the other day with a rice mangate, something up the East Coast, Myconi or someplace, who about bringing in laborers to work in the rice fields and in the rice mill. And I said, how is this possible? Why can't you give out people? Why are you prepared to fly people for $5,000 or $8,000 to Guyana, feed, house, and clothe them for a year or more on some contract? And why can you not give people from the communities, the talk they say people don't want to go cut cane no more, plant rice no more, this kind of stuff, but people still do it. Why can we not give them apprenticeships, give them a good stipend, give them the safety gear, the helmet, the gloves, the boots, the overalls, and all of those things, and carry them through a program, apprentice program, coach them in relation to how they will move into and up into work and skills in any industry. But that is the problem we have. One of the issues we've been having over the years, I would say, and some people conflate these issues with bringing people, with people smuggling and trafficking in persons. We had a problem where I think in 2019 or something, over 20,000 Haitians passed through the country. They cannot be accounted for in this country. And there were similar numbers for others. Traffic through the country, and people say, bring people, bring people. There was no consideration for the loss, the abuse, the deaths, the rape, and all of those things which are related to that movement, but we have a better handle on it now. And even now, we have the issue where Venezuelans, and of course, there was a time when we had to flee to Venezuela, and we developed, we got children and all of those things in Venezuela. They are coming in back to our country, but fewer Venezuelans are coming to the country now, and they're displacing Guyanese at the lower levels in services and being badly paid and badly treated. I had complaints up to yesterday morning in the office. So we want to provide opportunity for people. We want them to become Guyanese. We know we have too low a level of population to meet the proper demands of development of the country. But you got to come here, you got to want to become Guyanese, you got to do the right things, and we're going to formalize the things to become naturalized as a Guyanese, because it's fairly rudimentary at the moment. And we want to bring people in such a way that we're not swamped, that we don't have sovereign risks, that we don't have continuing risks in relation to transnational organized crime and those things. So my proposition, as it were, I didn't know I would have been the lead speaker on this. I just wanted to give barbs at the side, perhaps, or give comments. We have to, in a fairly focused way, take the position that we have to promote our young Guyanese people into work. That we have to foster more amongst those young people cultural and other awareness, and awareness of discipline, and of being proper and ready on the streets. And we have to face up to certain realities. We know some of these young people, parents are aware, father goes off for 21 or more days or somewhere fishing in some boat, or they're in the back dam somewhere digging gold or diamonds or cutting wood or something. And a long time ago, when I was a geologist in the bush, they used to take men from Morocco and Sand Creek. And it used to amaze me when we had a team leader, a foreman, and he would bring out a group of men from the village. And he controlled and did everything with it. And at Saturdays and Sundays, those men will sit down and write long letters to their wives. In fact, I was laughing at one of them at Morocco the other day and telling his wife, this man used to be writing you every fortnight, these long letters. But nowadays we have that thing there, the cell phone, now free of duty. And I think it has added more and more to the dysfunctionality of our menfolk. Some of them have truly taken on the position of relating to being told, send money, don't come. Or everything that is written about the wife or the partner on the coast, they get upset about it. And they want to come back and then drink or take drugs and fight and stab. And as I said, some of them have parents overseas, some of the young men coming out of school, and they don't want to work. They get 100 or 200 US a month, somebody send or a barrel, and they are not in any structured relationship in terms of moving along. You might leave them in a house, you might hop around with the girls, you might go to Starbucks or some market. They get into all kinds, they're easily deflected and distracted. And so there's no willingness to get into structured work. So at the level of the government, these things have to be tackled. We have to have our approaches here. We have to find partnerships with the private sector, with businesses, even with the small shops and things around. They give out apprenticeships and not to merely give people a piece of money and say you're trained in this and that, and then after a few months when you check on them, they're not doing what they were supposedly trained in. They have to be attached to something and develop relationships and understand the value of work, of commitment, of discipline, of safety. That is what we need. And so, Madam Chair, ministers, those were my initial comments, ladies and gentlemen. I'll stay a bit and see if we could perhaps skirmish over this issue a while. But I think this discussion which is being engaged on now is very important. But let me see what I should have said some other thing. In the mining industry, and I see one important man for mining over there who's working at it. They owe my people. But Oko West is the most advanced project at the moment. Oko West needs, within 18 months, 2,500 men and women to build the project. 2,500 men and women to build the project. The last time we did a project at Aurora, we brought in a lot of Peruvians and others. They helped get it done, which I was unhappy about. But they got it done. But 2,500 men and women have to be trained to build that project beginning 18 months. After 18 months. In 18 months, they have to be trained. To run the project, you will need 1,600 men and women. The last time they made efforts at Omai and these places, the Guyanese workforce was 93% of all persons employed. I'm worried that we may not get that ratio, that balance as we go forward even now. But that's the challenge now. We have to support the vocational schools, the technical institutes. Even at the high school levels, we have to get people ready for this. And then there's still the big bear out there, the oil and gas, which desperately needs our people to be involved, earning the big money too, which they earn sometimes when they're upskilled and they go to other places, they're also employed there. But we have to focus these. At Oko, it's going to be probably a new mining camp. And over 10 years, you might get 2 or 3 large gold mines in that area, each one producing 300 or 500,000 ounces a year. Each job out there will have a multiplying effect in respect of 5 persons, each throughout the government. And we have to develop and get the infrastructure related in the Essequibo for sovereign reasons and for development reasons. So the infrastructure will follow or go with the mine. So those are the things I wanted to say, ma'am. I hope I have been too extraneous, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Indeed, you've made some very important points, which I've taken note of, and I'm quite sure will be very helpful to our attendees as they contemplate some of the challenges they face and what are some of those factors as well that they can take into consideration. Our next speaker is no stranger to any one of you. I'd like, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to help me welcome to the podium the Minister of Public Works, the Honorable Bishop Juan Echel.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, the head of the Diaspora Unit, President Rousseau, my cabinet colleagues, Minister Singh and Minister Ben. I was wondering if it was a shortage of labor that got me here this morning, if they couldn't find anybody else. So I hope that's not a sign that we have shortage of labor. But what I will attempt to do is to tell you about what we are doing, what are the challenges we're having in getting that done, and if we could identify some gaps to make it happen faster. So in terms of Guyana's modernizing and transforming what is being done in terms of the Ministry of Public Works, but I would want to speak of the overall picture, because what we're doing in the Ministry of Public Works is clearly linked to and has been designed to facilitate activities in other areas. So it's not a standalone environment. For example, the building of roads and bridges, city fences, and other infrastructure is with a particular agenda in mind. So this morning, His Excellency visited a number of project sites on the East Coast. And one of the roads that are being built is what you would have experienced when you were coming here this morning. The widening to 4 lanes from the Kitty roundabout all the way out to Orange Nassau in the Mahika area. But the big question is why we're doing that. And it will come to what are the labor needs, because the intent, Enmore is being developed, sections of Enmore is being developed into an industrial zone. So that road is to facilitate easier access into the city, but you cannot develop Enmore with just what we have right now, 4 or 5 lanes of available space for traffic movement, when you will have to have greater volume, moving of greater volumes, and different kinds of articulated vehicles to surface there. So we are building a road from Ogle to connect with Eccles and then all the way on to Silica City, eventually on the Linden-Soosdijk Highway and connecting with Tamiri International Airport. But already along that alignment, there is a construction of a maternal and child health hospital, hotels, and other industrial activities that are happening along there. So we're talking about building a bridge to link Guyana and Suriname in the east, and developing our existing alignment between Linden and Lethem to co-join with Brazil, giving us access into South America. But that project, when it is put in its proper context of a deep water harbor at Berbice and the build out at Palmario, which will eventually include deep water harbor, oil refinery, hotels, stadiums, municipal airports, right away you'll start thinking that skills are needed to get that kind of work done. But when that is completed, the harbor is built, the road is built, it's not the end of what is required, because those projects is to facilitate development in those areas which will require jobs again. Right now in the tourism sector, I think we have about 8 hotels under construction. With hotels under construction, immediately you will need skills in the hospitality sector, and also we will need a supply chain to ensure that those hotels are adequately serviced, whether it is with food and all the other amenities. So in terms of what are the labor needs of Guyana, I think I will join with my colleague, Minister Ben, in highlighting to Guyanese and those in the diaspora that we need quantities, which means we need more people, and we also need more people who are skilled, equipped, and trained. And that is why we would want to commend, and I hope every Guyanese in the diaspora would understand the vision behind giving 20,000 scholarships through the GOLD program and the expansion of technical vocational training through the Ministry of Education, because we need more people and we need more skilled people. You would have heard before, the President would have indicated this, and the Vice President at his press conferences sometimes when they're discussing these and answering to the media. We're actually importing labor. I could give you one example, and it might shock all of you. We were left with no choice but to grant work permits for the contractor that is building the Ogle to Eccles Road to bring in drivers, an elementary job like drivers to drive heavy duty equipment, trucks. So I know some people will tell me, well, man, every day I see people driving. But right now they have 60 plus foreign nationals that are here driving for them. And I could assure you that through the Ministry of Public Works and through their own advertising, they've been hunting to get drivers locally for those trucks. So that's just an indication of how the demand for labor is becoming. With what is happening in terms of oil and gas, we understand that we might need about 1,000 certified welders. And that's one of the reasons why there is an investment that is taking place in Berbice to establish that training center. And that training center, as I understand it in its current design, will help to train and create the kind of skill sets that are needed for people in the oil and gas sector, but also to train and equip people that are needed in the hospitality sector as well, the chefs, the pastry chefs, hotel management, and all the rest of it. So the easiest thing for somebody to say at this time, we'd like to get your total developmental picture and how many people you need. And for some people, that is the discussion that they would like to have. You need 8 million people, or what the case is. But I beg to differ a little bit. And I think every Guyanese, including those in the diaspora, must applaud the PPPC's initiative to ensure that we have a local content policy right now. Because that local content policy, even though at this particular time is confined to the oil and gas sector, is sending the signal that while we are developing Guyana and we are attracting foreign direct investment, we are bringing in bigger companies, we're doing more things, we want to see more Guyanese being employed and partaking in the economic activities of Guyana and benefiting from it as well. Because what may very well happen if we didn't have that at a simple level, and I heard the VP address this, understand how this country works. There's a department at the Ministry of Public Works that is called CORE. These are people who do community enhancement, make sure things are running well and they are located in various regions. Like, for example, in Region 10, there's the full complement is 10. We only have 7. And people in Linden will tell you that they are looking for work. We're not employed. We've got 7, but 3 vacancies that are not filled. And not because we don't want to fill them, but some of our own people have a thinking that the only kinds of jobs that they should be doing is the one that pays high salaries. And then we have a situation where I have sat in my office and received delegations and individuals who have come from various countries, Guyanese who have come back home, and what they actually say to us, Rosalinda, we are here to see how we could help you. The language is always very enticing. We are here to see how we can help you. I said, yes. Tell me about your skills and so on. And then they will say how many years they've been working in the US and this is what they can do and the rest of it. But when you begin to tell them where the opportunities exist and how they can participate, oftentimes what they would like is to be hired as a consultant. That's where it is. And I'm going to make it very clear this morning because we're speaking as Guyanese brothers and sisters and we're reaching out and saying what are the skill sets. Everybody can be a consultant. And I would also want to say to our skilled, well-equipped, well-placed people in diaspora, please, we do have some Guyanese at home who are well-qualified, well-skilled, well-educated, and functioning exceptionally well. Their contribution must be appreciated and not looked down upon because there's people at the labor level, just in the construction sector, in our drive to build more homes for Guyanese. There are a number of initiatives that have been taken. We have taken young people who were in crime-prone communities and taught them how to become good entrepreneurs, starting them off with block making, which is a demand for housing. We have taught them how to do steel bending, to put the steel together to get construction going. We have taught them basic construction skills. Through the Board of Industrial Training, I know of a number of young men who have learned to operate the Bobcat. And it is my understanding is that once you could operate the Bobcat, you could actually graduate to operate all the other excavators because the features and the levers are basically the same. You just have to get the orientation. So there was a time when road construction was suffering tremendously in Guyana because of the lack of operators on bulldozers and rollers and excavators, because Minister Ben, in his other life, along with colleagues who have that kind of expertise of mining in the interior, had mopped up all the operators at $600,000 to $800,000 a month in the bush, and the fellows out here, it's between Mansour and you did that. We are victims of our own success. That's the point I'm making. The more you open up opportunities in the gold and mining sector, some of the people who were trained for work in the construction sector migrated to gold because of the economic advantage of working. So there's never enough labor. We are building out, constructing right now and starting Maybe Minister Singh would elaborate a little bit more about that. New hospitals. So along with the building out of new hospitals, we put out a program where the president has said very clear, and I'm saying this again today so somebody could understand, any Guyanese who have the basic qualification to enter to become a nurse, whether it's 1,000 or more than 1,000, we're going to train all to be nurses. And the approach is, if you need 1,000, train 2,000, because we know some of them will go away. Some of them will go to other jurisdictions, because we have to train more than is required. The aviation sector is expanding. We have now almost daily, I was in the Ogle area this morning, in less than 15 minutes, we had about 4 lifts, helicopters heading out to the EEZ, getting out. So just like the minibus is running on the road, the helicopters are now going out there. We need more pilots. We need more engineers to do the maintenance. If not, the companies that are running the service will bring the foreigners, and they will be doing everything. More planes are being bought by the local service providers. They're extending their fleet, so we need more people in aviation. And I think we need to say that we also need more women in aviation as well. In the maritime sector, of which I also have responsibility, I will speak quietly on this one so it won't become too loud. We really have a need for more captains. We got some mates, people who are qualified as mates conducting journeys with vessels. We need more people. And I have seen a number of females who have gone into the cadet program to be trained to be captains. In the maritime sector, we need more captains, people to work on the vessels. So whether we go to providing just services to the erection of buildings and building of roads, there's a great need in every sector. And how could we get this done in terms of solving the labor situation? One, I'd like to recommend that more investment be done at the secondary level. We have the business streams, we have the science streams, and we need to have the engineering and other technical vocational streams being developed. Not everybody's going to be a lawyer, not everybody's going to be a doctor, not everybody's going to be a pilot. We need more people to build out. Let me tell you some needs that exist right now in the Ministry of Public Works. Design engineers. Everything that is being done must be designed, and I'm not just talking here about architecture. We're talking here about designing. Because you don't want, when you start, let's say a road is designed based upon the skill sets that are there existing, and during the construction, or just when you start the construction, then you hear, this was left out of the bill, we didn't cater for this, we didn't cater for that, and a project that should have been 600 million end up costing 1.1 billion, just to give an example. So we need more design engineers. We need more project management professionals, because we need people to be able to manage projects efficiently and to be able to understand that time is also an important factor, not just the cost of completion, but the time in which a project is completed. So we need more people in that regard. Quality control and testing, we have our own labs, but we need to expand that. We need to have more people who are in the labs, doing quality control, ensuring that we have the right execution of projects. I was happy when the Audit Office of Guyana came to the Public Accounts Committee, of which I'm a member, asking for more engineers to be hired in the audit department, because that improves quality immediately. You have more engineers, you have the borehole tools, you have the people who could go out there and to get measured works done as an inspection of what has been done to ensure we get value for money. So we need more of that. And yes, we have to find a way of how we could pool all of our young men and our young women who are looking for work, that it is not just an idea that they're looking for work. Maybe we need to get some centers set up where people could actually show up in the morning, because some of you who are captains of business, you might need a couple of laborers today to help to get your container unpacked, to help to get your new bond properly reorganized. You're doing stock taking. You need temporary workers as well as you need permanent workers. So if I can say from where I sit and how I see things, in every sector in Guyana, health, we're building more hospitals. Education, we're building out more schools. We're building more roads. We are establishing more hard city fences while we grow more mangroves, because of mangrove depletion that is taking place in some of them along the coastline. So we need heavy-duty operators. We need people who could help with traffic management while projects are going on. We need more project managers. We need more skilled laborers. The bottom line, particularly when you're discussing with the diaspora, is the cost. What is the salary, or what is the payment? So to compensate for what takes place in the country where you are domiciled, people are all asking for consultancies where they could go to super level salaries. So there is a disconnect there. So I will hope that today's discussion, while we highlight what is needed and what needs to be recruited and the rest of it, we need to discuss that kind of operation in the context of being salaried or paid in Guyana, and not being salaried and paid as if you're in a foreign jurisdiction where the exchange rates put you at a significant disadvantage. That is my 2 cents to this discussion this morning. And I thank you very much for allowing me. Thanks for inviting me, Rosalinda. God bless.
Very well. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. And this is precisely why the Diaspora Unit has convened this particular forum. Many persons have asked us if the diaspora is joining. The answer is no. The reason being is would point back to exactly what Minister Edgell has pointed out. There is a huge disconnect between what people are seeking and what is actually needed in the country. And it is important that it is the local bodies, the private sector, the employers, the industry leaders who are in the field, who understands what's going on, that tells us what are the requirements, what are the needs, and also what are the logistical arrangement for these to happen. Now, we are aware that not every opportunity will be fulfilled or be taken up by diaspora members. We understand that. And Minister mentioned, indeed, cost is also part of that conversation. And so we want to get it from you because we want to make sure that the information that is shared eventually will be factual and will lead this country to get the kinds of people that it really needs to push development and to help you, the investor, the industry leaders, the innovators, to get the kind of skills you need to push the projects, the developmental projects, to completion at the time that it is absolutely needed. That being said, I'd like you to help me welcome the Senior Minister within the Office of the President with the Responsibility for Finance to give his remarks, the Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh.
Thank you very much, Rosalinda, Madam Chair, Cabinet colleagues, captains of industry and commerce, private sector leaders, corporate executives, and I'm told we have some recruitment agencies in the room as well, and members of the diaspora or representatives of diasporic organizations if they are with us today. Let me first of all congratulate the Diaspora Unit of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for organizing this extremely important event, bringing together such a wide range of stakeholders to discuss the very critical issues surrounding the labor market today and in the months and years ahead. I want to start by I want to start my remarks by making a reference to something that my president, our president, has often said, using these words and using different words, but meaning the same thing. I'm sure that each one of you in this room has heard the president say on more than one occasion that this is not a time for business as usual. He might have used a different set of words from time to time, but he has repeatedly said, given the pace at which things are changing in Guyana, none of us can operate in a business as usual manner. This is not a time for doing the same that we've always been doing. This is not the time or the age for incrementalism, meaning doing the same that we've always been doing, but maybe doing a little bit more every year. This is not the time for tinkering at the fringes, maintaining the status quo, but fixing a few small things at the fringes, convincing ourselves that we are adapting to change, when in fact we're just tinkering at the margins with the unimportant. President Ali has often and repeatedly said, this is not a time for business as usual. And he has said that, I know, to the private sector. Sometimes he says this is a time to be bold. I'm sure you've all heard him say this is the time to be bold. Sometimes he has said this to the private sector, and he has often said it to public sector agencies, including all of us in government, and it applies to all of us. And I want to use that broad charge, a charge of thinking out of the box, the charge of departing from business as usual. I want that to be the underlying theme. I want to ask you to bear that thought in mind as the underlying theme in all that I'm about to say. And the rest of what I'm about to say is essentially the following. First of all, as you've heard from my colleagues, and as you know, the economy is growing at a meteoric pace. Over the last 2 or 3 years, our economy has grown at an average in excess of 40% per annum. And over the next 3 years, our economy will be growing by an average of more than 25% per annum. I do not recall any other country going through such a sustained period of extraordinary growth in living memory. I do not recall a period of any other country at any time in my own living memory going through an episode of sustained growth of more than 25% for 5 years or more in succession. This is a rare and almost unprecedented episode of growth. And those of us who are young and who will have the privilege of being around 20 or 30 years from now will live to see textbooks written about this extraordinary growth episode that would have occurred in Guyana at this particular point in our history. That growth reflects remarkable expansion, of course, in oil and gas. And I want you to consider the following. Right now, we are producing probably about 360,000 barrels of oil a day with the 2 FPSOs that are producing. By the end of the year, we'll be producing somewhere between 560 or 600,000 barrels of oil per day. By 2027, we'll be producing 1.2 million barrels of oil per day. And based on the current proven reserves that we have, the current proven reserves, not counting ongoing exploration activities in Stabroek, and not counting exploration activities in the other 14 blocks that have been put out to auction, not counting any of those, excluding all of those, within the space of the next 8 years, we are likely to have perhaps 9 or 10 FPSOs producing, extracting oil in Guyana's offshore territory. Right now, with this growth episode that you're seeing, we have 2 FPSOs. We are likely, based on current proven reserves, within the space of the 8 or 9 years, to get up to 9. Ponder on that for a moment. Ponder on that for a moment. There are only 2 operating right now. We're going to get up within a decade easily to 9 or 10. Think about that. Think about the fact that as a government, we have said that we want to ensure that we promote rapid growth in the non-oil economy. Minister Robson-Ben spoke about the Oko development in gold. That's likely potentially to be Guyana's biggest gold mine ever, bigger than Omai, and many of you in this room remember Omai. I see Chris Sammy in the room. He's working on another development, likely to result in a large-scale mining operation. Right, Chris? I hope I'm not telling any secrets, telling any tales out of school. Chris is working hard on and with tremendous positive results. And there are at least 2 or 3 other developments that could quite easily result in large-scale gold mines, each of which will perhaps employ 1,000 persons. Minister Ben spoke about 1,000 persons in mine construction, and perhaps another 1,000 in mine operation. And that's only direct employment. That's not counting service providers and indirect employment. Consider those developments. And here I'm only speaking about gold. You have seen what's happening in bauxite. Just a few days, a couple of weeks ago, the president commissioned Kiln 15 in Linden and the MAZ project. That's going to see bauxite production more than double in Linden over the course of the next 2 years. There are talks about resuscitating bauxite in the Berbice River. And there are new developments elsewhere, new bauxite developments and deposits to be developed. There are other minerals, manganese and others, also under development. Manganese, in fact, is being produced right now in the Northwest with potential for expansion. There is, and the list goes on. If you consider agriculture, and the President's emphasis on food security and our position as the bread basket and food basket of the Caribbean, agriculture itself is poised for a remarkable takeoff. Large-scale corn and soybean production being perhaps the most prominent example, but agro-processing as well, because by 2025, we're going to have at least 300 megawatts, at least 400 megawatts of new electricity on the grid, and electricity will be half the price of what it is today. Consider what that will mean for industrial development. Then you have the services sector. I see the business process outsourcing sector represented in the room. I see Qualfon represented by its country manager, and there might be others in the room too. That sector perhaps already employs a couple thousand persons. And I had a meeting with the sector recently, and that sector could quite easily, within the space of just a few years, easily employ another 5,000 persons. Very easily. And in fact, we are speaking right now with the sector about what we can do to help them to get up. They have the business. And in fact, the constraint that they face is the labor market constraint, which we're working with the sector. I had a meeting just about 2 or 3 weeks ago with them on how we can address and unlock this labor market bottleneck that they're facing. That's another 5,000 people who will be working. We're building 4 call center shells. The companies are themselves doing expansion. Luana is here from Qualfon, but all of the other companies present in Guyana are expanding rapidly too. They can bring more business to Guyana. Guyana is a competitive destination, they will tell you this. Guyana is a competitive destination for BPO business for a variety of reasons. Bandwidth is a lot cheaper now than it used to be as a result of our interventions in the telecommunications sector. Electricity will be even cheaper from 2025 onwards. Our labor market is best suited to that line of work, has suitable skills for the greater part, but they need more numbers. They want bigger numbers. And we could talk through every single sector. Now, if you consider all of those developments, I didn't speak about construction, I didn't speak about the ancillary services for oil and gas, shore-based engineering services, processing plants, logistics. If you consider all of those developments, you will get a set, and if I look around the room, I see so many companies represented, all poised for expansion. Doesn't matter what they're doing. If they're manufacturing beverages, there are new things that they're looking at. That if they're building homes, if they're doing metal fabrication, if they're building or operating hotels or restaurants, every single sector of productive activity in Guyana is poised for rapid growth and will have tremendous demand for skilled labor going forward. In fact, even now, if you speak to most people in the private sector, they will say they have a challenge getting workers. You might tell me differently. Frankly, I would be pleasantly surprised if you told me differently. But thus far, every private sector leader that I have spoken with has said to me, they have a challenge getting skilled workers. That's the message that I hear from people. On the other hand, on many of my community outreaches, I encounter people who say they're looking for jobs. I go not only in rural communities, not only far out of town, not only in far-flung places, even in Georgetown. You do a community engagement, and what do people say? They want jobs. And you ask yourself, how do you reconcile these two, I think, reasonably evident realities? How do you reconcile that on the employer side of the conversation, you're being told they can't get people, and on the supply side, the worker or potential worker population, they are saying to you they can't get jobs? How do you reconcile these two realities? I want to mention or leave with you a few thoughts that we have to think about, all of us together, on how we can confront them. The first that I want to, the first is, so clearly there's a little bit of a mismatch in the labor market. So I want to leave a few thoughts with you, for you to ponder, bearing in mind my opening message that we have to be bold, we have to think out of the box, and this is not the time for business as usual. Keep that in mind. First, I want to raise the question of occupational and skills mismatch, or occupational mobility of labor. So first of all, there is an issue with whether people have relevant skills to fill the jobs that are available. So you might have people who are interested in working, but they don't have the skills that are needed to fill the vacancies that are available. We recognize that this is an issue, and for that reason, we're investing very heavily in training. We're investing in formal academic training. Of course, the University of Guyana continues to do an excellent job positioning and repositioning itself to ensure that its graduates have relevant skills needed for the labor market of today and tomorrow. We're also working through other innovative means, including things like online scholarships through programs such as the Goal Scholarship Program. We are ramping up technical and vocational training, including through the traditional technical institutes, through the Board of Industrial Training, and very shortly through the Guyana Technical Training College, which is going to be home of the National Oil and Gas Institute. Minister Edgell referred to this, and Minister Ben, and which will also be home of the National Tourism and Hospitality Institute that is currently being built right now. So we're ramping up technical and vocational training. But this question about reaching out to people who are looking for work and ensuring that they have the right set of skills is an issue that we, as government and private sector, have to put our heads together to think about how we overcome this issue. Because if you consider what skilled laborers are being paid, if you consider what heavy equipment operators are being paid, I don't think they're being paid skimpily. If you consider what skilled welders are being paid, I don't think they're being paid stingily. And so I rather suspect that there must be a cohort of people out there that we can find, perhaps 1,000, there must be 1,000 persons that we can find to train to be heavy equipment operators, to increase the supply in that sector. 1,000 welders, my colleague Cabinet spoke about the welders, fabricators, machinists, skilled workers for the construction sector, just to give a few examples. The BPO sector, like I said, we're having a conversation about how we can find people and train them with the relevant skills to make them more easily suitable and employable in the BPO sector. This is something that we are committed. We want as many Guyanese people to be in work. And I want to say to you that we are open to working with the private sector to address this question of skills and training to resolve the skills gap where one exists. But I want to say too that the issue of occupational mobility has to be addressed. You know, sometimes we have a person, and there are a lot of cultural rigidities as well. There are a lot of cultural rigidities. You know, there are many parts of society, many places in our country where we are all raised to believe that we will work in a nice air-conditioned office, sitting behind a nice, very fast, very modern, very flashy-looking computer. And we are raised almost to think that is our destiny. And if we don't end up in a nice air-conditioned office, with beautiful carpets and nice lighting, and a computer, then we have failed. And there are people who will accept, maybe slightly grudgingly, $100,000 a month job behind a computer, but will not go for a $600,000 a month job driving a piece of heavy equipment, because they don't consider themselves, they were not raised to be a heavy equipment operator. They were not raised to be a heavy equipment operator. They were raised to sit and work in a nice office. They will sit in front of the computer, grumble about the $100,000 a month, be unhappy and probably be unproductive. But they will not consider a 6-month training course or less that can equip them to walk into a job as a heavy equipment operator and easily pay them $600,000 a month. Is it $600,000 a month now, Robeson? In the interior. Worse yet, in the interior. They were not raised to go and work in the interior. They were raised to work on High Street and Main Street. Why are you sending them to Northwest Aurora or Toroparo or Omai, even though those jobs are paying $600,000 a month? And far too often we find people unwilling to practice occupational mobility. But any rational person must constantly be considering what are the alternatives before them and how can they adapt and adjust to best take advantage of the opportunity, or reskill even where that is needed, to best position themselves to take advantage of the opportunities that lie before them. You know how many people are sitting down in an $80,000 or a $90,000 a month job right now, very unhappy, but they will not do a free training course that the government will offer them that will make them an equipment operator in 6 months and equip them to work for $600,000. You know how many people right now today are sitting behind a computer, unhappy with their $80,000 or $90,000 a month, but will not take the free training course to go and earn $600,000 a month? You know many of them. You know many of them. We know many of them. And that is something too that we need, that is a mold that we have to break too. Encouraging people to be more mobile. You know, and I mean occupationally mobile, more occupationally flexible, be willing to change course, be willing to acquire new skills, where go where the jobs are. And you know, ironically, and some of this is maybe a little bit culturally, ironically, they will do it if they go to New York. They will do it if they go to New York. They go with their medical degrees as a doctor, medical doctor. But if they can't get a job as a doctor, they take any job and do it, maybe sometimes acquire a new skill and do that. Or they take a job until they can get the job in the right occupation that they want to get. And they do it. And this is something that we need to think about, how we can break some of these cultural rigidities and cultural prejudices too. You know, there's this concept that you have arrived if you work in an office, but you haven't quite arrived if you're working with a hard hat. The people wearing a hard hat are aspiring no longer to have to wear a hard hat and to sit in a nice, cool office. I see the Vice Chancellor smiling. You might have a different view, VC. But it's my considered view that this is a real issue. More and more encouraging people to practice occupational mobility, reskilling, retraining, going to where the jobs are. Part of this is communication too. Part of this is explaining to people where the opportunities are and what these opportunities pay, destigmatizing some types of work. So I want to leave that thought with you. I want to leave another thought too, and that is the question of geographical mobility. Often, where the jobs are is not necessarily where the jobless are. So often you have the jobs happening at the mouth of the Demerara River, on the east bank of Demerara, on the west bank of Demerara. There's a flurry of activity. Breedenhoop, Wales, Houston, flurry of activity. And perhaps some of the people who are looking for work are located somewhere else. They may be on the East Coast, they may be in Berbice, they may be in Essequibo, they may be in Linden. And we need to think about how, here again, the reality is, it's a sensitive thing because you don't want to suggest that people need to move from where they live to go somewhere else to get a job. That's perhaps a slightly sensitive and politically problematic thing to suggest. But the reality is that in the modern world, we all move to where the opportunities are. We all move to where the opportunities are. If your uncle lives in, I don't know the United States of America that well, but if your uncle lives in Minnesota, I don't have anything against Minnesota. I think it's a very prosperous and beautiful place. But if your uncle lives in Minnesota and he sponsors you to go to the United States of America, and you go and you're living in Minnesota, and you can't get a job in Minnesota, but you can get a job in New York, you move to New York. Everybody does that. Everybody does that. But somehow in Guyana, if you live far out on the East Coast, or you live in Essequibo, or you live in Berbice or in Linden, and you hear about a job opportunity, no matter that this job is paying $400,000, no matter that you can do a free training course and get a job that will pay you $400,000 or $500,000 or $600,000 a month, and use only maybe $100,000 or a little bit more than $100,000 a month to rent fairly decent accommodation, it is almost like an imponderable thing. How you going to leave where you grow up all your life? How you going to leave your family and go so far away to live and work? Imponderable. You can't speak to a man if you're far away about a job opportunity in Georgetown. You can say, how are you going to reach there? Much less if you start talking about job opportunity in Northwest. It is like the end of the world. End of the world. Never mind that they will go to New York and commute for 2 hours every morning and 2 hours every night, in winter and in summer. To begin with, the job got, we have a culture in Guyana, the minibus got to stop on your bridge, or else you cost the driver and the conductor. The minibus dare not go to the bus stop or the corner and tell you walk back. The job got to come to where I live. The job got to come where I live. I'm not prepared to go where the jobs are. That is an imponderable. It's unthinkable. How can you even tell me that I got to go far away to work? And that is something too we need to think about as a society, as employers, as government. There are small solutions. Some people, for example, provide a shuttle bus to help their workers to get to work. Don't think that this is such a far-fetched idea. Some people have provided shuttle buses. We all remember. I remember Mr. Dennis Morgan of Denmore. You would recall that he had a very elaborate garment manufacturing business exporting to the United States of America. You recall Mr. Dennis Morgan, giant of the Guyanese private sector, titan of the Guyanese private sector. Was a large employer, employed, I believe, thousands, mostly women. And he had shuttle buses. You had the Denmore buses. Every morning they drive down the East Coast, they drive down the East Bank, they drive down West Coast, and they bring the people to his factory. So he didn't have this problem that how you going to get from wherever to wherever. How you going to get from West Coast to East Bank or East Coast or wherever it was that he had his factories. A simple solution like that. Now, of course, that doesn't address the sort of moving far distances, but it's a viable solution. And I've raised, for example, to give you one example, with the BPO sector, I've said, look, if you're located, say, in East Bank, not to focus on any particular example, but if you're located in East Bank and somebody has to take 2 buses to get to your place of work, chances are they will not consider you a prospective employer, because they're not going to take 2 buses to get to your place of work. They will factor that into their wage expectation. They will factor it into their wage expectation. But if you provide a shuttle bus every morning and you say, look, at 8 o'clock this bus is going to be leaving Enmore, driving down the East Coast and coming to our location to get here for 9 o'clock, they may very well consider working with you. And it's not an expensive solution. And immediately you increase the catchment area from which you're going to recruit. Because now everybody on the East Coast who would have thought it's impossible to get to the East Bank because I got to take 1 bus to come to town and another bus to go up the East Bank, now they'll say, look, I just come out and stand up on the road and jump in my company's shuttle bus and get to work. Increasingly, companies, these are practical solutions that I think we have to think about. And there are examples, there are companies that have done this and done this very successfully in the past. Then you have issues of a potential pool of workers potential pool of persons who, and so if I can kind of close off on that point, even things like accommodation. I know companies today that are building or renting accommodation because they're recruiting people from out of town. So they build accommodation or they rent accommodation. So if they recruit you from out of town, you stay in the company accommodation. And immediately their pool of potentially employable persons has increased. It doesn't come for free, but it means that you are now able to draw on a much bigger pool of potential recruits. It might not be a viable solution for smaller companies, but for larger companies, it may very well be something to consider. The companies that are out of town do it. The mining companies, for example, build a whole mining town our whole mining camp. So on the question of geographical mobility, moving to where the opportunities are and what companies can do to make it easier, I think provide some food for thought. Then I want to raise the issue of different and new modes of employment. This will not apply to all sectors. It will apply only to some, a few sectors. But you have a large pool of people who essentially have excluded themselves from the job market. You have young women who perhaps may have become a mother. They have toddlers or infants that they have to take care of. They have nobody that they can leave their children with. And so as far as they're concerned, they are out of the labor market. They can't work because they got children, they can't leave their children at home, and they have nobody to look after their children. Here again, this is not an intractable problem that societies around the world have not grappled with. Child care facilities, whether state provided or corporate provided, are a norm. They're a norm elsewhere in the world. Here again, if you have a child care facility, and we are building out some, we have built some ourselves, but even in the private sector, if you're a large employer, this is also something to consider, that if perhaps you have child care facilities, or you can partner with somebody to provide child care facilities, you have an option there, potentially to overcome this hurdle. And you might not know this, but there are companies in Guyana, particularly working in the telecommunications and ICT sector, that in fact are already employing people using the work from home mode. So several of the BPOs and a number of the telephone companies there are hundreds of Guyanese people. There are hundreds of Guyanese people at home that I know of, working with companies that you know. There's one company that I know has more than 100 persons working at home. They're at home, they're in front of a computer, and they're providing services for their company or through their company to clients elsewhere. And here again, like I said, I recognize this will not apply to all sectors. It will only apply to certain sectors. But here again, there are some types of jobs that can be performed remotely. COVID taught us that, demonstrated that to us. The technology is available, and some kinds of jobs lend themselves to that. And so I leave that for you to consider. Because here again you have, if you think about it, let's say you are running a call center. You may have somebody who has 3 children at home. They can't leave their 3 children at home to come to sit in a physical call center. But if they are in the home and they can provide some sort of supervision of what is going on in the home while working on the computer, they could quite easily do a shift on their computer. They can do a shift in the evenings. You may have people who are already employed. They may be a teacher, they may be doing some other job somewhere during the day. They may be willing to do a shift in the evening. You may have people who have exited the job market because they've retired. We have public servants and teachers retiring at age 55. They're still eminently employable. They might not want to go physically into an office and sit surrounded by 18-year-olds. But if they're sitting, it's a reality. If I'm a 55-year-old retired teacher, I have my pension, but I want to augment my pension with a second income. I'm not going to consider going to sit down, or I might not consider going to sit down in a call center somewhere, surrounded by people who are 16, 17, well not 16, but who are 18, somewhere between 18 and 21. But if I can sit in the comfort and privacy of my own home and do the same job, then I probably will. And so you've got a whole population there that potentially we can bring in. I'm throwing these thoughts out. They might sound random, but I'm throwing these thoughts out really because We have an issue in this country with getting people with the right skills, bringing them into the labor market and putting them to work. And we need to put our heads together. I know I haven't quite addressed the diasporic dimension of things, but I think it is time to think out of the box. The days of the personnel manager going to Chronicle and Stabrook and putting in a 12-column-inch advertisement saying XYZ company is hereby recruiting, has vacancies for the following. You put it in Sunday Chronicle. Nothing wrong with Sunday Chronicle and Sunday Stabrook. But the days of the HR manager saying we got 10 vacancy, I'm going to put this thing up Sunday Chronicle, Sunday Stabrook and see what applications come through. I think those days, you can still do that if you wish, but I think we are living in an era today that requires us to think a little bit differently. We're living in an era today that requires us to think a little bit differently. There may very well be people in the diaspora looking for decent paying jobs too, that we can target. A lot of people in the diaspora want to come back home. They may have relevant skills, but they don't know what the opportunities are that's available. So I'm glad, I'm going to stop there before I overstay my welcome at the microphone. And knowing, of course, that I haven't quite yet overstayed my welcome at the microphone, I'm going to stop there. But Rosalinda, thank you very much for opening this conversation. We have to have it, and my message to you, my appeal to you, is to please push the boundary and think out of the box, because this is a reality. We're only seeing the beginning of this issue, you know. We're only seeing the beginning of this issue. When you consider the expansion that's going to take place in this country, if you think you got a problem now, 5, 10 years from now, it will be a much bigger issue. And so I'm glad that we've started this conversation. I have left with you some, what I hope are some reasonably productive food for thought. Think about them. We as a government are committed to working with the private sector, and we're committed to working with the labor force to resolve any mismatches that might exist in the labor market, because our objective is very simple. We want a competitive private sector, which means having people with relevant skills, and we want as many Guyanese people working in fulfilling and satisfying jobs. That's our objective. And we're committed to working with every single stakeholder to realize that objective. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Indeed, there's quite a lot there for everyone to ponder on, and I hope that when we regroup here, because we're going to break for 15 minutes, then maximum 15 minutes, so you can have a quick snack and coffee to cater for the coffee station. I would like for you to come back so we can discuss in detail some of the suggestions that we've heard from our ministers, as we continue the discussion on the labor shortages and how not just the diaspora, but every sector or stakeholder, whether they're locals, foreign workers, or they're diaspora persons who are interested, how they can play a role in Guyana's development and fill in those gaps. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being a great audience for the morning session. And we'll now break for 15 minutes, and the ministers will also take their leave.